I would like to begin introducing Lauren now. Lauren Emeritz is a graphic designer, a letterpress printer, a book artist. She creates prints and books by hand using a Vandercook press and wood type, including type she designs and carves herself. In 2016, the Library of Congress Rare Books and Special Collections Division acquired her book, Hand-Carved Alphabet, which is on display in our open gallery right now. In 2017, Lauren completed an internship in letterpress design at Hatch Show Print in Nashville, Tennessee, founded in 1879. Hatch Show is one of the great letterpress print shops in the U.S., maybe the one. And Lauren holds a BFA in graphic design from the University of Delaware. She's president and creative director of Abstract Orange, a graphic design firm in Washington, D.C., and a letterpress associate at Pyramid Atlantic Art Center, a favorite place of mine in Hyattsville, Maryland, where she teaches letterpress printing and design. One last plug, Lauren will be offering a block printing workshop on Wednesday, April 3rd, later this semester, at 2 p.m. in the printmaking studio here in our department at the K. Fritz Art Center. Students, members of the public, guests, are invited to attend and participate in the workshop. It's free, and so mark your calendars and join us if you're able. And even though we can't hear you, your applause over Zoom, since we're all silenced, but please join me in welcoming Lauren Emeritz, and I'll turn the mic over to you now, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to start by saying thank you to Montgomery College for hosting me today and this semester. And thank you to the faculty, staff, and students for making me feel welcome and sharing your space and your art practices with me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you all see that? Perfect. I'll assume you said yes. So hello, my name is Lauren Emeritz. I was born and grew up in DC. I went to Wilson High School just down the road, and I took as many art classes as I could. But I was afraid to go to art school. So I applied to the University of Delaware, and I didn't know what I would study, but they had everything, including art. I planned to start school as undecided and decide along the way. It turns out to take art classes freshman year, you had to be an art major. So I changed my plan, and I decided I would be an art major until I decided what I wanted to be. It turns out I did want to be an art major, but I was afraid to do it because it seemed impractical. In college, I discovered graphic design and typography, and I loved it. When you see my work, you'll see that I still do. I also learned about branding, logos, colors, consistency. I always liked bright colors. I found that the color orange was not used very much. It felt very unloved. I decided I would embrace it. To me, the color orange is very bold and creative. I started using it as my brand's color. You might have noticed. I graduated in 2004 with a degree in visual communications with a concentration in graphic design. I moved back to DC to find a job. After many months of searching and sending out emails and resumes, I saw a job on WashingtonPost.com and applied. The job was at a small design studio in downtown DC. The studio was owned by a woman who turned out to be an amazing mentor and boss. It was a great company, and I loved working there. We worked with several companies and nonprofit organizations. The project most people have probably seen is the National Cherry Blossom Festival logo. I designed the logo in pink blossom that decorate this city every year. I love graphic design, but I found I spent all my time on the computer, and I started to feel disconnected from my work. I missed making things with my hands. I had heard of letterpress printing, which is like old school graphic design. At Delaware, my professor had been starting a letterpress shop. I took a letterpress workshop at Pyramid Atlantic Art Center, which is just down the street here in Silver Spring. It was back then. It was awesome. I loved playing with the wood type, paper, and ink, and using my hands to create. That was in about 2011. Please note that I did not quit my day job, and I found that my knowledge of letterpress printing grew. It helped my understanding of graphic design as well. I would go to Letterpress Happy Hour, a 2-hour open studio on Wednesday evenings to play with ink and type and paper. This is where I got to practice locking up a form and printing. After a while, I was concerned there was not enough wood type, and I decided to take a workshop called Carve Your Own Type. It was in Asheville, North Carolina. It was a 2-day workshop. On the first day, I carved an A that you can see here, and on the second day, I carved a B. I decided to carve the whole alphabet so I could experiment with carving different kinds of wood and letter form. It took over a year, but I finally finished the alphabet. I decided I would print it in orange ink, obviously. When I finished, I had a stack of alphabet prints and I wasn't sure what to do with them. After a time, I decided to bind them into a book. I had heard about book arts, but did not really know what that was. I wanted it to look like a real book, so I researched a lot of books to see what made a book real. I decided to use as many orange materials as possible to bind the book. I used orange book cloth, orange mulberry paper for hinges, and orange foil stamping. When I finished, I had an edition of 20 hinge-bound accordion books, and I wasn't sure what to do with them. That was about 2016. I went to a book art fair and symposium in Delaware. One of my former professors was exhibiting his work. I took the book to show him. He showed it to another printer and book artist, Peter Koch. Peter is the founder of the Codex Foundation and is a well-known letterpress and book art, is well-known in the letterpress and book arts world. If you want to learn more about him and the Codex Foundation, go to codexfoundation.org. He saw my book and asked if it was for sale. He purchased my book and helped connect me to the world of book arts. A short time later, I went to a talk at the Library of Congress. I had heard from a friend in APHA, the American Printing History Association, that they were getting ready to do a show on alphabet books. It turns out alphabet books are a thing. When the librarian heard that Peter Koch had bought my book, he wanted one for the Library of Congress special collection and the alphabet show. That was when I really became a book artist. I was hooked and I had to make more books, but where to start? I decided rather than spending a lot of time thinking about the next topic, I would continue the experimentation and exploration of the alphabet book. I scanned in the letter forms from my alphabet book and made a miniature version using a laser cutter and different kinds of wood. I tried to follow the style of the original book using a similar structure: hinged accordion, orange mulberry paper, orange book cloth, and orange foil stamping, and change it up a little bit by making it smaller and using the different printing blocks. Over the next couple years, I made numbers, mini numbers, shapes, and mini shapes, all continuing the same process of exploration, learning about process and form. That was roughly 2018. While researching books and book arts, I came across Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass, one of the most classic and iconic authors and books. I decided to make a book to celebrate Walt Whitman's 200th birthday. He titled his book Leaves of Grass, referring to the paper being made from grass. I decided to make a book with grass made from paper. I used a laser cutter to cut the paper grass so it would be consistent in every book. I made an edition of 36 copies because Whitman was 36 when he published Leaves of Grass the first time, and I was 36 when I published my version. This project was fun because it looks like it'll be a book, but when you open it, it's more of a sculpture or art object. I love watching people open the book because they're always surprised when they see inside, and I think art should make people smile. Just before the pandemic, Amos Kennedy, an artist and letterpress printer, came to Pyramid Atlantic to teach a workshop. His printing practice and school of bad printing was one of the things that drew me to letterpress. If you don't know his work, you should check him out on Instagram at Kennedy Prints. His energy that weekend and some inspired me and some of my fellow artists at Pyramid to get printing. We booked time in the studio for next week, but then everything shut down. But I was so excited about printing, I just had to print. So I dusted off an old Vandercook 99 proof press that I had stored in my basement, but not used. Fortunately for me, I had just purchased some wood type a few months before. I had been afraid to use it, but not anymore. I started printing. I played with colors and layers and all sorts of stuff. From about March to May, I printed things I heard, sayings, abstract graphics, and all sorts of things. I bought more ink, a bigger ink plate, more brayers. I had a lot of time, but with the shutdown, not much else to do. Then George Floyd was killed, and I fell into a depression. I felt trapped and hopeless. I wondered how people could treat each other so badly. I wonder what rights we have. I had been to Eleanor Roosevelt's home and learned about her work on the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, and I thought about doing a book about her or the Declaration, but I wasn't sure what. In my small basement print shop, I decided to print a book based on the Declaration of Human Rights, exploring the language. I took the original text and reduced it way down so I could print it with large wood type. I printed over 600 sheets, 30 rights times 20 copies, plus a title page. I hope that people will have conversations about human rights, what they are, and what they mean to each of us. In 2021, after the long dark winter, I started to search for hope. This brought me to another classic literary figure, Emily Dickinson. I decided to make a visual representation or art object based on her poem, Hope is the Thing with Feathers. Originally, I planned to make it like the Whitman book, a box with two covers, creating a trifold. I planned to use the same handmade paper, but in blue, but it really didn't feel right. I decided to explore the idea of hope and the soul, and I decided hope would be a bright color and the soul would be made of wood and maybe have some orange. The final book is a yellow wooden box that opens to reveal a thing with feathers, orange feathers. The book is printed with wood type on an adjustable bed press. I guess that is what hope looks like to me. During this time, another woman who inspired me was Corita Kent. She was a nun in LA in the 1960s who taught serigraphy or screen printing. She used bright colors and made rules like Rule 1, find a place you trust and then try trusting it for a while. Rule 4, consider everything an experiment. Rule 7, the only rule is work. If you don't know her work, you can check her out at corita.org. Using her rules as a basis, I created a book using wood type and words pulled from her rules, like trust, experiment, work. The book is a celebration of her and her work. In this slide, you can see my book is shown in front of a piece by Corita. So the small book in the front is my book, and then the big piece in the back is her screen print. In 2023, I wanted to make a book about global warming and the climate crisis. I was concerned about humanity's lack of concern and action. At first, I was thinking about how beautiful and fragile the earth is. But after a while, I started thinking that it is not the earth, but us humans that are in danger. The book is a letter from Earth to humans, trying to warn them that while the earth has been here for billions of years, humans will not survive if they do not protect their habitat. I use cyanotypes, which is a photosensitive process where you expose images with UV light. I created several images using plants and plastics on plexiglass. I also used UV light, so it felt like the message was coming from the earth around us. I also created a micro version of this book that's only 1 inch tall, mostly to amuse myself. After that, I decided to make a book about another classic element, water. I learned paper making, a process that uses a lot of water, so the book would use water as the previous book used UV light. The text inside the book follows the flow of water in nature, from raindrops to streams to rivers to oceans and back to the shore. The text is disrupted by other negative aspects of water, such as floods, acidity, disease, and drought. The work is meant to evoke the beauty of water and the problems related to water and how these things shape our lives. I recently finished the Civil Rights Act of 1964 for the 60th anniversary of the law. Like the Declaration of Human Rights, it is based on an existing document, and I reduced down the text so I could print it with wood type. It presents the text of the Civil Rights Act for people to see and discuss. While working on these books for the past number of years, I have learned about my process and how I like to create. I have learned about my limitations and my strengths. I found that the hardest part is to start, then the hardest part is to keep going, and finally the hardest part is to finish. Thanks for joining me here today, and I look forward to seeing you around the studio. You can see more of my work at abstractorange.com, or you can come down to the studio and check it out on the walls. Thank you very much.
And again, I'll say, as you have questions for Lauren, drop them into the chat and I'll read them. I'm checking around here. Thank you. Uh-oh. We have, oh, one just popped in. I have to read this one, Lauren. First off, from James Quigley. Why do you hate on metal type?
Hi, James. I don't necessarily hate metal type, but I find that it's very small and fussy. And I find that when I try and set it, my fingers just knock it over a lot. I really prefer wood type. I like the material, both like the wood, how it's just kind of warm, and I like the blocks and how easy it is to move together. The metal type is really heavy also, so when you set the forms, it's harder to move it all around. Yeah, I do have a small amount of metal type. I have two typefaces. They're both alternate Gothic, 24 point and 12 points. Because sometimes you need to put a small line of text at the bottom of your print that says who printed it.
Yeah. One question. Oh, well, looks like a couple have popped in there, and I have another here. We have a question from my classroom about what are you working on here? What are you working on right now?
So I'm working on a number of projects. Right here, I'm working on kind of a 3-color reduction, not a reduction, lino cut. So it's a wood cut out of linoleum, and it's 3 colors. It's yellow, orange, and blue, and it's going to be an orange, and it says La Orange underneath it. I'm also doing a lithograph of that. So I haven't done lithography before, but Kevin is a wonderful teacher and teaches a lithography class on 2 of the days of the week. So I've been going in there and learning from him and the other students. So I've always thought litho is kind of interesting and beautiful, but the big stones are very heavy. So we'll see how it goes. Yesterday I did the second etch, so it's ready to print. So we'll see how that goes. I'll have to find out what I've heard people who love it, love it.
Have you ever made, this also comes from James Quigley. Have you ever made wood type with the laser cutter out of thin wood that you then laminated onto thicker wood?
So for my small wood type, the mini alphabet, I did laser cut where I laser engraved. So a laser cutter has kind of 2 processes, engraving and cutting. And when it does the cutting, it just does like the vector outline of a shape. And when it does the engraving, it's more like an old bitmap printer where it goes back and forth and burns away the wood. What I found gave me better results was to do the engraving, but to do it several times. So it kind of eat down the plate and give me enough of a relief surface. And I used primarily 1/4-inch wood. So for people who don't know, wood type is usually about 0.918 tall. So you have to build up to that. So I would use 1/4 of an inch of of different kinds of wood, and then I would mount it on a 3/4 inch board. So sometimes I use pine. I didn't affix them to each other to be all the time because I was just printing them all at once. So I set up a board and I just taped them down to the board, and then I removed them from the board.
Thank you. We have a question. Oh, by the way, here, before I get this one, a request by Marty and Bob Emeritz. Could you please show us your work behind you?
So the work behind me is a series that I've been working on that's called Building a Studio Practice, and it's actually what's up in the gallery also. So it's just a series of prints that are kind of different things that I've said to myself, like almost advice that I give myself as I'm working. And for the most part, it's kind of things that I help me create new work. And I try and avoid using don't or should. So not so avoiding shoulds, avoiding don'ts. I try to keep it simple, search for truth, imagine the possibilities, have fun, take risks. So I'm mostly just playing with type in a little bit of a larger size. It's similar to my printing in the time of COVID, where I was trying to do a little bit more, a little bit larger size, and then experiment with different pieces. And this first one, it says keep it simple. It has an A on there, and the second one has a B. So it's actually a series that has alphabets. The second one is F, all the way. I've made it up to Q, but so I'm still working on the series, and there's a few that I might have to go back and rework a little bit. But the idea was just to encourage myself and give myself some advice. And then I thought that here in the studio with the students, it might be useful to share my advice, the things that I've thought of so far. But it all tries to be kind of positive, to move forward. And he uses a few different techniques. I don't know if you can tell in the keep it simple, that piece in the background is actually a Sintra board, which you can carve and mount to be type high. And it prints really interestingly. And then this one's probably harder to see in the search for truth, but there's some bubble wrap printed in the background. So I was experimenting with printing different things and just overlapping the shapes. And then these two kind of on the end behind me, the text on them is very small, but it says, remember what matters, and I am not in a hurry. And those are just kind of things that I try and remind myself that it's not in a hurry. It's not a race to get there, but kind of enjoying the journey. And the backgrounds behind them are actually just done on a flat lino block. And I used ink and then mineral spirits. I was learning about Helen Frankenthaler, who used paint thinner to thin her paints and then did really thin layers. So I was trying that with kind of a more experimental printerly sort of thing. And it gets an interesting mono print sort of feel. And then these are just some posters I did for the show. And if you're interested in printing one of those, I have the type block up down here in my studio. So if anybody wants to come down and print one, probably students in the building rather than elsewhere in the world, but it'll be here for a while.
I hope you students out there will take her up on that. It's an experience that you should have, especially the graphic design students out there, the students taking typography and so forth. This is there's deep roots here. I have a question from Megan Van Wagner. It reads, I'm intrigued by the subjects of your books, but curious about the format and the impact you hope the books will have. Why the artist book format? Have you thought about taking these subjects, even the existing prints, and using digital processes to make them larger or more accessible, changing the format so that more people could experience them?
I think that I've really come to this kind of in an organic way, where it started with me just wanting to make stuff with my hands and not be on the computer. So I think that in some ways I have really focused on more the ink and the paper and kind of the the format. And once I found that artist books was a thing, I really felt drawn to it. It just seemed like a really fun world to play in, and kind of an existing space. Somebody has asked me if I could make a Kindle version of my alphabet book. And it seems like kind of a silly and ridiculous thing where I have this alphabet where all of the letters are different. And if once you put it into a Kindle book, you could either do images, so they're all the images, or if you just loaded it in as text, it would really just be 26 letters, and you could adjust the fonts and the size and all of that. So I think that there's possibilities for expansion into other spaces, digital or commercial printing. Somebody recommended the other day just making a child's book out of the alphabet book, where instead of doing kind of the letterpress and the fine printing, maybe something commercially produced. And it's definitely, there's a lot of possibilities. And I think, I'm exploring what's out there and what possibilities there are. And I think that, I don't know, we'll see what happens.
Thank you, Megan, for that question. From Amy Billingham. Lauren, can you talk about what you learned, enjoyed, worked on at Hatch?
Sure. So at Hatch Show Prints, they are a working letterpress shop that does posters for concerts and events. So while I was there, I actually got to work on a real order, a real request. So it was a design job. It came in, they had a certain amount of text that they needed, and then I could set whatever I wanted. And then I would do a couple proofs of it and send it to the client, and they would decide if they approved it or if they had changes. So I learned a little bit about mixing inks for large quantities. I forget exactly if it was like 200 or 300. So it was a much bigger print run and a much bigger puddle of ink. They do some interesting things, like they have a number of people working in their shop. So they have to have boards where they can store their work while they're working on it. And then they also don't have like one inking station. They put down a piece of paper and mix ink and make like giant quantities. I'm doing this with my hands, but you can't see it. Make giant quantities of ink. So it was just a very different sort of process. And in some ways it was like beautiful and amazing. And in other ways, it really was more of a commercial sort of endeavor rather than an artistic sort of endeavor. And I know there are lots of wonderful artists that work there, and they make beautiful artistic posters. But I found that it was a little bit different than I had actually expected, and that I learned a lot about using that space as a commercial shop. And I was pretty amazed at like the amount of work and how it just kept rolling in, and the amount of posters that they were printing and shipping, and it was beautiful. My favorite part was definitely they had this huge wall of wood type in the back, and they had this ladder that went up to it, and it was like the really big stuff. And I was like, can I go up there? And they're like, yes. And I just got to go and like see all of the beautiful wood type, and it was just amazing and fantastic. But my main problem was that I was like, can I play with this? And they're like, no, you have to work. And I was like, but I just want to play. So I think there was a little bit of that where it was amazing and I loved it. And I would love to go back and play some more.
Absolutely. I have, sort of a similar question that I'll present. I guess that would come to speak to your experience at Pyramid Atlantic. And the reason I ask this, I guess where I want to go with this is they have an internship application up and been sharing it with our students. And I'm wondering if to those that are sitting out there, if you could tell them what kind of experience or why they might consider a thing like that, why Pyramid and so forth.
Yeah, I think that Pyramid Atlantic, obviously a great place for me. I loved it. I thought going there and learning to print was something that really took a long time. I started back in 2011, and I'm still I mean, I'm not there this semester, so that's why it feels a little bit weird, like past tense, but I'll probably be back there in June. But it's just like such a great art center where you can go and use the presses, because the presses are big and bulky and kind of expensive, and you have to have the space to house them. So it's nice to have that community shop where you can go and use the big industrial equipment. But then there's also an art community, so you can learn from the different people there. You can see what they're working on, and you can see I don't know, just like a variety of different things going on in the art world. And as you kind of get stuck or have a question, you can find out what other people are working on. And I think I spoke to one of the students the other day, just saying that it is a really great thing to kind of be able to exchange your time for sort of the knowledge. So I was very fortunate that I got to volunteer there for a long time, so I could have all the time, because printing is not really that inexpensive. Like even renting the space it can be fairly expensive. And so by volunteering, I really didn't have to worry as much about the cost, that I could exchange my volunteer hours for printing time. And that way I could just kind of play around and didn't have to be as focused on making commercial sorts of products, like greeting cards or prints to sell. I could really just find what it was that I enjoyed making and follow kind of my artistic practice.
Thank you. I hope some of the students out there are making those applications. One of you might get lucky. I have one more question here, unless
Sure.
more come in. I believe this is well, it's a username. I'll skip that because I might misinterpret it. Why do you think you were afraid or / hesitant about becoming an artist? If you could sit down with your early college self, what would you tell her?
I think I was afraid because I really felt that I needed to get a job and make money, and that being an artist was kind of a frivolous thing, and that it really didn't seem like such a I don't know, it didn't feel like serious enough. I felt like I wanted to be an adult, and I wanted to be, you know, a serious person. And I felt like that meant I had to get a job and, you know, do boring stuff and work 9 to 5. And it turns out that sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. And so I think that over the course of time, I've realized that you can make it happen. It's just a lot of times and places, it's you know, you just have to figure it out. And sometimes it's a struggle. A lot of people, find different paths and ways to make it work. And if I could sit down with my early college self, interesting. I think that I actually was very fortunate that I found a really good path. The graphic design program there was fantastic, and it did teach me a lot of things that I needed to learn, that were about kind of the concepts of design and kind of the how design worked. So it was very like both practical knowledge about design and then kind of overall overarching like ways to think about design. And I found, you know, a couple things that, I learned were like, you shouldn't center text unless you have to. So like, for the most part, I'm like, oh, well, let's try not to center text unless we have to, just to, you know, keep it interesting, keep it different, and finding ways to really find rules and then break rules and find patterns and break patterns. I think that I was very fortunate that I did that graphic design program and that I found a great job, and I did have a great boss. And I think that really helped me develop as a person, and find my way to art in a way where like I was ready for it. And that even now, like I'm still definitely growing and building and exploring. And I'm going to be a beginner probably for my whole life as I continue learning new things, either lithography or, digital stuff, the internet, I don't know. There's AI, there's so many things that are just kind of interesting and fascinating. And I find that there's so many possibilities. So I would just say the hardest part is starting. And if I could tell myself, just start. Don't be afraid. you know, put one foot in the other. Oh, I heard a good saying. It's a polka. It's little by little. So just you know, start doing something and then keep going and see where it leads.
That's good advice, I'd say. Um, one more question just came in here. Beyond the current Advice to Self series, what future artwork might you have planned?
Well, I actually have several because I find that sometimes it's helpful to have multiple projects to work on so that when you don't want to work on one, you can procrastinate by working on another. So in my Earth and Water series, I think that the next classic elements is probably going to be fire. I've already started putting together a little mock-up for that, and I may work on it while I'm here. I may not. I think it'll have some reduction, some woodcuts and that sort of stuff. So I may start working on that this summer. In my human rights, civil rights, I think I might do a book on women's rights. Do they have any? Time will tell. So I'm kind of looking for what that text could be, or what sort of possibilities are there. I have other poetry books in mind. I'm kind of working that one of the beautiful things about Walt Whitman is because he was in the 1800s, he's in the public domain. So trying to figure out about more modern poets and copyright issues. I feel like there's still lots of learning going on there. So I'm working on an additional poetry book, but I do have to make sure that I have the rights to use it before I move forward with that. So that's like 3 books. And then I've got another book maybe in that alphabet book series. I always imagined that the 4th book after shapes would be something like dancing shapes, and I need neon orange book cloth. So there's lots of problems that I've created there and things to learn. So maybe something in that direction. And that miniature book that I made, the mini Earth book, I really love it because it's adorable, but it is not legible. I letterpressed it and used cyanotype, and it's not legible. And I think I'd like it to be legible. So I think that might be a book that I rework and do again, possibly as like a risograph. I haven't used risograph, and that seems like a fun process to use also. So I have 1 or 2 ideas. I also might try and work big and finish this series. And, you know, I have lots of ideas and lots of projects I would like to work on. And the question is just how many hours in the day? Because you do have to sleep, I'm pretty sure.
Every so often. Would you ever, or have you done collaborations with living poets or writers?
I have worked on a collaborative project with another artist, and we had a lot of fun, and we put a lot of stuff together. They were not a poet or a writer, but that is definitely something I would consider. I feel like the collaborative process is really fantastic and does allow you to expand a little bit outside of just the things that I know, and it allows me to learn from them, and then they can learn from me, and it's really a nice process that I find. I think it would have to be a poet or writer who is okay with my style. I did work on one project. The Kalamazoo Book Art Center has a Poets in Print series, and they sent me a poem, and I did kind of a carving that was printed and then sent it to them, and then they printed the text, the poem on top, because they have lots of small metal type and I don't, and it was a little bit of a longer poem. So I have done kind of one that was a collaboration that was kind of further apart, and I hope that the poet was happy with how it turned out. But I think that yeah, I would definitely be open to collaborations and other poets and writers.
I think that's all of our questions. Lauren, I want to thank you. We're so happy to have you in the department this semester. It's already, I mean, I'm having a blast from my perspective, having you, you know, working alongside our students. So just want to thank you on behalf of everyone that in the session here with us. And I want to remind everyone to come to that workshop on April 3rd, and come make a block print with us. And I think that's
Thank
all.
you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all.